When I look back at my life, I realize something that shocks most people. Wealth was never an accident. It was never about luck, never about being born in the right family, and never about being at the right place at the right time. Wealth, at least the kind of wealth that gives you freedom, was the result of discipline, rules I chose to follow long before the results showed up. I still remember those early years when money was scarce and every day felt like a struggle. People around me thought success belonged to the privileged few, but I refused to believe that lie. I asked myself a simple question. Why do some people succeed with money while others, equally talented, spend their entire lives in financial stress? That question haunted me, but it also pushed me forward. Through trial and error, through mistakes and lessons, I discovered something powerful. Money, like life itself, responds to laws. It follows cause and effect. Break the rules and you suffer. Follow them and you rise. And the best part, these rules don't care how old you are, where you start, or how much you currently earn. They will work for you if you decide to work them. The truth is, I wasn't special. I didn't have extraordinary intelligence or connections. What I did have was a burning desire to change my life, and that desire led me to 7 rules. Rules that didn't just create financial wealth, but gave me freedom. Freedom to choose how to spend my time, freedom to take care of the people I loved, and freedom to live without fear. Today, I'm going to share those 7 rules with you. They changed my life forever, and if you're willing, they can do the same for you. Third rule that starting my financial life was understanding the power of compound interest. I didn't understand it at first. To me, money was something you earned and spent. But the day I discovered that money could quietly multiply while I slept was the day I realized I would never have to work for money forever if I respected this rule. I'll never forget the first time I put a small amount of money aside and let it sit. At the time, it didn't look like much. A few dollars of interest here, a few dollars there. Honestly, it felt insignificant. But as the years went by, I noticed something remarkable. That money began to grow on its own. It was no longer me working for it, it was working for me. And that realization was life-changing. Compound interest is slow at the beginning. That's why so many people ignore it. They think, what's the point? This isn't making me rich. But the truth is, compound interest is like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first it's small and unimpressive, but the longer it rolls, the bigger and faster it grows, until it becomes unstoppable. That's the power of time plus patience. I've seen men who chased quick money, jumping from one scheme to the next, always looking for fast returns. Most of them ended up broke, frustrated, or worse, in debt. But the ones who built true wealth were the ones who started early, stayed consistent, and let compound interest do its quiet work year after year. They weren't gamblers, they were builders. Here's the truth I learned. Every dollar you invest today is worth far more than a dollar you invest 10 years from now. Why? Because compound interest rewards consistency, not urgency. The earlier you start, the more powerful the curve becomes. So I made it a habit. No matter what, I set aside money that was untouchable. Money meant only to grow. I protected it. I didn't pull it out for vacations or impulse buys. I let it sit. I let it multiply, and over time it built the foundation of my wealth. If you want freedom, let your money work harder than you do. Because compound interest doesn't just build wealth, it builds time, options, and possibility. And the sooner you start, the sooner you'll see it change. The one that completely transformed my financial life was simple, but it felt almost unnatural at first. Pay yourself first. When I got my first real paycheck, I remember how quickly the money disappeared. Rent, bills, food, little luxuries here and there. It was gone before I even had time to breathe. And at the end of the month, I would sit there wondering, where did it all go? That's when I realized I was doing what most people do. I was working for everyone else but myself. The landlord got paid. The store got paid. The government got paid. But I didn't. I was last on my own list. Then one day I made a decision that seemed small but changed everything. I told myself, from this day forward, I will keep a portion of every dollar I earn. No matter how little, no matter how tempting the expenses, I will pay myself first. Even if it was just 10%, it was mine. untouchable, reserved for my future. And let me tell you, that one habit gave me more peace than a raise ever did. At first the difference felt tiny. Saving a small amount didn't make me feel rich. But slowly something powerful started happening. My confidence grew. My anxiety about emergencies faded. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. My money wasn't only paying bills, it was paying me back with freedom. Here's the truth I discovered. If you don't learn to save when you make a little, you will never save when you make a lot. Because saving is not about the amount, it's about the discipline. It's about telling yourself, my future matters more than my impulse. And once you form that habit, your money begins to work for you instead of the other way around. So let me ask you, are you paying yourself first, or are you still waiting to see what's left over? Because if you wait for leftovers, you'll always be hungry. But when you decide to pay yourself first, even with just a little, you begin the journey to freedom. That's the first rule I learned was this, and it will change. Live below your means. It sounds so simple, but let me tell you, it is one of the hardest rules to practice. Because the moment we start making more money, something inside us whispers, upgrade your life. You deserve it. I know that voice very well because I listened to it once. I remember when I got a raise early in my career, I thought I was rich. I moved into a bigger apartment, bought nicer clothes, and treated myself to more dinners out. And do you know what happened? At the end of the month, I was still broke. I had more income, but I was living exactly the same way as before, paycheck to paycheck. That's when I realized the painful truth. Income doesn't equal wealth. What you keep is more important than what you earn. So I made a decision. I chose to live like I was still earning less, even when I was making more. I drove the same old car. I didn't upgrade my lifestyle just because I could. Instead, I built margin into my life space between what I earned and what I spent. That margin became savings. It became investments. It became peace of mind. Living below your means is not about living a miserable life. It's not about saying no to joy. It's about saying no to excess, so you can say yes to opportunity. Because opportunity only comes to the man who is prepared, not the man who is trapped by expense. I watched people around me fall into the trap of lifestyle inflation. Every time they made more, they spent more. But when emergencies came or jobs disappeared, their fancy lifestyles crumbled like a house of cards. Meanwhile, I slept well because I knew I could weather the storm. Why? Because I had built discipline into my spending. So here's the question I asked myself, and I want you to ask yourself too. Am I trying to look rich or am I trying to be free? Because the two are not the same. And when you choose freedom over appearances, when you choose to live below your means, you unlock the real power of money, not stress, not pressure. Guard your earning power. At first, I thought wealth was only about saving money and watching it grow, but over time I realized that the foundation of all wealth is the ability to earn. If you lose that, everything else crumbles. When I was young, I didn't have much money, but I had energy, skills to learn, and a mind that could grow. That was my earning power, and I quickly saw that it was my greatest asset, because money comes and goes, but the ability to create value, to solve problems, and to earn, that can last a lifetime if you protect it. I made it a priority to invest in myself. I read books when others were wasting hours on distractions. I practiced skills when others were relaxing. I sought mentors, training, and education because I knew something most people ignore. Your income will always match the value you bring to the marketplace. You don't get paid for your time. You get paid for the value you create in that time. I've seen many people get comfortable in a job, in a routine, in one skill. They stop learning and slowly their earning power fades. Then one day the world changes, the market shifts, and they're left behind unprepared. I refused to let that happen to me. I treated my mind like the most valuable investment I owned. I guarded my health because energy is wealth. I protected my reputation because trust creates opportunities. And I kept sharpening my skills because every improvement made me more valuable. One year I asked myself, what if I could make just $10,000 more by increasing my value? That small growth in my skill set created a ripple effect, more savings, more investments, more freedom. And that's when I understood, you don't have to work harder to be wealthy, you have to become worth more. Guard your earning power like your life depends on it, because it does. Everything else flows from this one decision. When you invest in yourself, you are building a machine that can never be taken from you. Was one that saved me from years of frustration. Avoid debt that doesn't make you money. I've always believed that debt is like a quiet thief. It doesn't break into your house, but it steals your future one payment at a time. When I was younger, I watched people buy cars they couldn't afford, furniture they didn't need, and clothes just to impress others. They looked successful on the outside, but on the inside they were slaves to their payments. Month after month, their hard-earned money went to the bank, not to their future. I refused to let that happen to me. If I ever took on debt, I asked myself one simple question. Will this debt bring me more than it costs me? If the answer was no, I walked away, because I learned that not all debt is bad, but most of it is destructive. There is good debt, like borrowing to invest in education that increases your skills, or starting a business that creates income, or buying a property that produces cash flow. That kind of debt is leverage. But the debt that only buys appearances is nothing but a trap. I remember being tempted many times. Friends told me, take the loan, upgrade your life, you deserve it. But I had a bigger vision. I wanted freedom, not fancy. I wanted peace, not pressure. And that meant I had to learn the power of saying no. Living without destructive debt gave me something priceless. Sleep. I could rest at night, knowing my money was mine. I wasn't chained to lenders. I wasn't working for interest rates. I was working for me, and that peace of mind was worth more than any car, gadget, or luxury item I could have bought. Here's the truth. Debt is easy to get into, but hard to escape. Every time you take it, you are spending tomorrow's freedom on today's impulse, and that is too high a price. If it doesn't grow you, if it doesn't multiply your future, avoid it. Because true wealth is not owing anyone. Is this? Track every dollar. At first I thought this was unnecessary. I believed as long as I worked hard and earned enough, the money would take care of itself. But I learned a painful lesson. The money you don't track will always disappear. I remember one year when I was making more than I ever had before, yet somehow I still felt broke. I told myself, it's fine, I'll figure it out next month. But every month ended the same, with stress, with confusion, with no progress. Finally, I forced myself to sit down and write out exactly where my money was going. And what I discovered shocked me. Small leaks, little habits, unnecessary subscriptions, mindless spending were draining my future. I wasn't broke because I didn't earn enough. I was broke because I wasn't paying attention. That's when I made a commitment. I will know where every dollar goes. Not some of it, not occasionally, but always. I treated my finances the way a captain treats a ship, with a map, with a course, with regular checkups. And slowly my life changed. I began to see patterns. I noticed what was building me and what was breaking me. I saw where I could cut, where I could save, and where I could invest. At first it felt tedious, but soon it gave me power, because knowing where my money was going gave me control. I stopped guessing. I stopped worrying. I stopped living in the fog. I knew exactly where I stood, and that gave me peace of mind. Most people won't do this. They'll say it's boring, too much work, too restrictive. But ask them how much they saved last month and they'll hesitate. Ask them how much they wasted, and they won't know. Don't be like most people. Be the exception. Track your money and you'll master it. Because money is like a soldier. If you don't give it orders, it will wander off. But when you lead it with clarity, it works for you. And that's the difference between being broke, I learned, is this. Give generously, but only after you've built stability. When I was younger, I wanted to give. I wanted to help others, to support family, to contribute to causes I cared about. But there was a problem. I had nothing to give. I was drowning in my own financial struggles, and trying to give out of lack only left me weaker. I learned a powerful truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Real generosity doesn't come from guilt or pressure. It comes from strength. Once I had built a foundation with the other 6 rules, once I was saving, living below my means, harnessing compound interest, guarding my earning power, avoiding destructive debt, and tracking every dollar, I reached a point where giving became natural, joyful, and sustainable. I wasn't giving out of fear or obligation. I was giving out of abundance. I'll never forget the first time I gave freely, without worrying if I could afford it. It was a small act, but it filled me with more joy than any purchase ever had. That's when I understood, wealth is not just about what you keep. It's about what you can release. It's about using money as a tool to make a difference, to lift others, to create impact beyond yourself. But here's the key: you must build before you give. Too many people try to give while they are still unstable. They donate money they should be saving. They take on obligations they can't sustain. And in the end, they hurt themselves and can't help anyone. True generosity comes from a place of order, not chaos. So I made it my mission to give after I secured my foundation. And when I did, something incredible happened. My giving created ripple effects far greater than I could have imagined. It inspired others. It multiplied purpose. It gave my wealth meaning. And that's the beauty of this seventh rule. When you follow it, money stops being about survival and becomes about significance. Because wealth is not just about living well. It's about giving well. And that is the highest. I realized something important. Wealth was never about numbers in a bank account. It was about freedom. The freedom to live without fear. The freedom to choose how I spend my time. The freedom to give, to grow, and to serve. And all of that came from following 7 simple rules. I paid myself first because I knew my future mattered. I lived below my means because peace was more valuable than appearances. I harnessed the power of compound interest, letting time and patience work for me. I guarded my earning power, constantly growing, learning, and protecting my ability to create value. I avoided debt that only drains, refusing to spend tomorrow's freedom on today's impulses. I tracked every dollar because clarity creates control. And finally, I gave generously, but only after building stability, turning wealth into something greater than myself. These rules weren't easy at first, but they were simple. And the truth is, anyone can live by them. It doesn't matter how old you are, where you come from, or how much you earn. Wealth responds to discipline, not excuses. I wasn't born rich. I didn't win the lottery. I wasn't special, but I made a choice to follow these rules consistently, even when it was uncomfortable. And because of that choice, I built a life of freedom. Now it's your turn. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to wait until you make more money. You can start today, right now, with whatever you have. Follow the rules, live by them, and watch how your life transforms. Because wealth is not built in a day, it is built daily. And the sooner you begin, the sooner freedom will be yours.